This is the Troll Patrol, live with Justin Freakin.
I've still got bed hair going on or something here. What the fuck is going on with my hair? Welcome to the Troll Patrol live. We have a verdict in the Karen Reed trial. She was the woman accused of murdering her cop boyfriend. Got off the first time. It was a mistrial in the first trial. This is the end of the second trial. It looks like the jury is going to acquit her. Now, crazy shit been going on. The jury said they returned a verdict earlier, but then said that was a false alarm. But now we apparently have a verdict. Everyone is in the courtroom. We're going to go to, I think this is CBS Boston, getting ready for the verdict.
Goes into the court and keep the old forms sealed and in the record.
And we should point out, because Catherine, you made a very good point when it came to the timeline of this. Because everything happened so quickly, your first inclination was to think that they came and knocked on the door, said they had a verdict, and then a few minutes later came back and said they didn't have a verdict, and then a couple of minutes later, Christina Rex is saying they had a verdict. But what you're saying is that was at the end of lunch. Lunch was ending around 1:30, so they probably did go back for a full hour to re-deliberate. It wasn't like boom, boom, boom. There was a full hour where they went back and talked again.
It seems like that because it also takes a bit of time. You know, when a verdict comes in and the parties, both the Commonwealth is probably in their office and the defense team and Miss Reed.
The parties
are waiting elsewhere off-site.
RB, I've not had weed at all. I'm completely sober.
Everybody back in. Sometimes that takes, 20 to 40 minutes, depending on where everybody is. So I think by the time we actually saw the first information from the court relative to this, knocking of the door and then knocking of the door again, we were probably a good 45 minutes or so out from when she originally received that information. And then we've had maybe 10 or 15 minutes. So it sounds like probably they had an hour or so.
You're saying Reed is
their original decision,
reporting that she is nervous, that she feels
some, very
nervous heading into this verdict.
Minor or last minute, sort of questions, and decided that everybody was
the courthouse seems to be surrounded by supporters of Reed.
Now, Ms. Loftus, thank you. We do want to bring in Mr. Jack Lew. He is a retired judge, and we want to talk to him because as I've been listening to everything from Cheryl, from David, from Ms. Loftus, Penny, Rex, I think another thought that I have is what kind of ramifications does this have for other court cases down the line? Just everything we've seen play out, this second trial, the media interviews. Mr. Lew, thank you for joining us.
Mr. Lew.
All right, happy to be here. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Can you talk to us about not only, so this is the retrial, this is Karen Reed's
the second trial.
Tell us about the way that this retrial has played out. I'm curious about what kind of ramifications this could have for future cases down the line.
The verdicts could have ramifications if the defendant, quote, wins with no major crime convictions. Then it supports the idea that a kitchen sink defense is a good idea.
The indication is that
the idea that
you may get charged with operating a vehicle
click fee fuel
while intoxicated. That could be the only thing the jury convicts her of.
A program of witness intimidation, attempted witness intimidation, is a good idea. If the defendant loses, though, in the sense of getting convicted of any of the upper charges, then it suggests the opposite. A kitchen sink defense is not a good idea, and that a social media fueled, click fee fueled witness intimidation program is not a good idea. And to answer the obvious question, anything except a win for the defendant is guilty of OUI or not guilty of all the other charges. A loss for the defendant is guilty of anything else.
Judge Lew, this is David Wade. Quick question for you. And by the way, thank you for joining us. Really appreciate that. I wish I could have seen your face when Judge Cannoni said that they had a verdict and then they didn't have a verdict. Have you ever, in all your years as a judge, ever heard anything like that?
I've never seen that, not in my 21 years on the bench in Massachusetts as a jury trial judge. I've never even heard of it in court legend. Court legend does contain the following. that the jury returns a verdict in open court, they poll the jurors and a juror says, no, I do not affirm that verdict. That does occur in court legend and probably in reality. But this, what has happened today, I've never even heard of it in court legend. This case is unbelievable.
It's been insane.
You would have seen my jaw drop. Instead of 2 chins, I had 3 chins. I was amazed.
Now I wish we had that. I have to ask the control room if we were recording on your Zoom feed.
My God.
And I think, you know, what makes this all so relatable is
Hello, welcome in.
Judge Lou's response was all of our response. We're sitting here, we're listening, and we're like, all right, we're there. And she's like, wait, not quite, because they came back and said, no, actually, we don't. We were all shocked. We were all like, wait a minute, can this be happening?
Right.
I've never heard of this happening before.
Follow up to what you said, because you used the phrase kitchen sink defense, right? And all of our indications at this point, at least all of the hints at this point, led to the idea that the jury was really stuck on the manslaughter charge. And this manslaughter charge, part of the confusion is there are all these subcharges, including operating under the influence. That was the defense's idea. Originally, the thought process was it was just going to say manslaughter, guilty or not guilty, right? That was the defense that said, no, add all these other little charges as well.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm exactly answering your question, but if it's a guilty of OUI, operating under the influence only, then the suggestion could be that they would have been better off going with the defense kind of announced in court by David Yannetti years ago that this was a tragic mistake at considerable less cost and considerable less money costs and considerable less social costs, because that's an attainable result with this is a terrible, horrible tragedy defense, which is what Mr. Yannetti said way at the beginning. Instead of tearing everybody apart by this kitchen sink defense. But we made.
I don't think she drunkenly hit him.
I don't know what I'm talking about, or at least I don't have a crystal ball, and the defense has won.
You know, Judge, it's Cheryl Fiandaca. Thank you again for being with us today. One of the things I know you were talking about with the kids.
And I think what really happened in this case is she probably murdered him.
You know, they threw everything at this. This was a police.
But the cops were so bad at their job
that were responsible.
She's going to get off on it.
And she was not the one who caused the death. Is that
because there are many indications that the cops cut corners, that they may have even planted evidence.
Defense lawyers, decades ago.
Media Winch, welcome in.
Times.
I feel like this is another O.J. Simpson trial.
You keep your powder dry and use every possible defense.
The defendant is guilty, but the cops were so incompetent.
The only credible defense left.
There was no way to be able to obtain
Mr. Jackson
a verdict.
Announced the kitchen sink defense in his open.
There's no way to obtain a conviction.
It was a strategic error, in my opinion, but they may still win. But the kitchen sink defense is.
I think they've won.
We have multiple defenses, and some of them even
should be within the hour, Warlord. Apparently, everyone is already in the courtroom,
it best
so it shouldn't be too much longer.
I did not punch that man, and if I did, it was in self-defense. And I wasn't even there. That's a kitchen sink defense. But when you express all of those options,
all indications is that the jury is going to let her off again.
Powder dry,
and that's what I'm rooting for in this case.
So if you were betting at this point, what would you think the jury came back with based on what we've seen for questions the past couple of days here?
Oh, you know, I don't know if I'm willing to bet. I would say after the questions about
it looked like it was going to be a mistrial today or yesterday.
Big win for the defense. Now I'm thinking more than now. I'm willing to say, only for public education, that I'm thinking it's more than an OUI conviction, which is a loss for Ms. Reed.
Interesting.
So it seems that if she gets convicted on anything, it's going to be the OUI.
Yeah, why would they take up all of today and part of yesterday if it was going to be an OUI only conviction? if that was what was going to happen. The problem is this is truly a black box. You know, people, you read crazy things on the internet about what's going on in the jury room.
I am not high enough for this. I'm not high at all.
Clue. It's a black box. We're all just wondering. We can get some indications, but we might as well.
Let's get high.
Who the Pope is going to be based on the smoke coming out of the Sistine Chapel.
So, Judge, if it turns out that she is only found guilty on that OUI charge, you know, I think the family, obviously, of John O'Keefe would be very disappointed. But, you know, potential penalty in that case, does the...
I've only been awake for like an hour.
Would that play into anything
Tops,
that would happen?
maybe an hour and a half.
No, the other charges will, I can say with a lot of confidence. I can't guarantee it, but I'm 99.9% sure that if she...
I apparently came back on last night.
Was only, nothing else, they will... the judge will sentence her to the so-called 24D program, which is a loss of license.
Sorry, we have to interrupt.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the 12
We're going to go back to
deliberating
court
jurors
and the judge.
present.
Yes.
May I inquire?
Yes.
Mr. Foreman, members of the jury, have you agreed upon a verdict? Yes. Thank you. May I see the papers?
Here we go.
Foreman, have the verdicts have been placed in this envelope and have they been in your presence ever since? Yes.
Deliberating jurors remain standing.
Fuck is this exciting?
Standing, all other parties may be seated.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the...
Let my woman off. She didn't do anything wrong.
May I inquire?
Yes.
Mr. Foreman, members of the jury, have you agreed upon a verdict?
Even if she did kill him, she didn't do anything wrong.
Mr. Foreman, on docket number 2282CR117001, murder in the second degree, what say you? Is the defendant at the bar guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you? No. Do you agree?
Yes.
Do all of you agree? Yes. Thank you. 002, what say you? Is the defendant at the bar not guilty or guilty?
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Is not guilty or guilty of that charge or any lesser included charge?
It was like not guilty on the murder and manslaughter.
5, operating under the influence of liquor by operating a motor vehicle with a blood alcohol level of 0.08 or greater. Correct?
Yes.
So say you, Mr. Foreman?
Guilty.
So say you all? 003, what say you? Is the defendant at the bar leaving the scene after accident resulting in death? Is the defendant not guilty or guilty?
Not guilty.
So say you, Mr. Foreman? So say you all?
She ran the table.
As the court records it, you upon your oath say the defendant on 001 is not guilty.
She is not guilty. 2
is guilty of operating under the influence of liquor, and 003 not guilty. Thank you.
Karen Reed is innocent.
Everybody please be seated. Jurors, we thank you for your service. We're going to send you back to services complete. I'd like to come back and talk to you for a little bit afterwards. So thank you very much.
All rise.
Karen Reed exonerated in court. Did not kill her cop boyfriend. Probably did. The jury has found her not guilty on all counts. This brings to an end one of the craziest cases ever in the U.S. legal system.
In the Karen Reed retrial, not guilty of second-degree murder, not guilty of manslaughter. However, the jury says she is guilty of operating under the influence.
Oh, I thought they said not guilty on that one.
Not guilty of leaving the scene of an accident.
Okay, so she was found guilty of
in writing,
operating under the influence. That's the only count they found her guilty of.
Not be sealed. You may use the request not to seal form, which is posted on the trial court's website on mass.gov.
They're probably going to lose her license for a year.
The commissioner of probation at the address provided on
6 months or whatever it is.
That if the records regarding the charges which you have been found not guilty are sealed, you will be unable to access the sealed record of the not guilty dispositions or any other records regarding those charges. If you want copies of any documents regarding those charges before the record...
Karen Reed. Karen Reed.
In 10 days. Do you understand? Thank you.
All right, so we need a date for sentencing. Can we do it next week?
And we would be prepared to go forward today.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, she might
not guilty dispositions.
Possibly have to serve, what,
And we do want
a week or something? Probably community service more than likely.
found not guilty by the jury on second degree, not
All right,
guilty
so
on
we
that
need a
manslaughter
date for
charge, but they
sentencing.
did
Can we
find
do
her
it
guilty
next
of the
week?
OUI charge. And in that moment, we know you're getting a look outside right now.
Okay.
When this was happening, you could hear inside the courtroom, you can hear the Free Karen Reed chants. So you're getting a look outside at some of the...
You could hear me chanting it.
Did also see while this was being read was a very visibly emotional Karen Reed. You could see her wipe tears from her eyes. You could see her hug her team around her.
What do you guys think? Do you think she killed him?
When that was...
I think she probably killed him.
And again to the judge.
Okay.
We ask that she be treated no differently, no better.
So I'm happy to do it. All right. Thank you all.
1 year probation, 1 year probation on docket number 002, the lesser included offense of operating under the influence. 1 year probation. Thank you. The 24.
Yeah, 1 year probation, probably 20 hours community service.
All rise.
Okay, so much was happening there, and the judge saying goodbye there after what has been a very long process. Let's bring in Cheryl Fiandaca.
Years. It took years to get here.
Not guilty for that murder, second degree. Not guilty for manslaughter, but under the subcharge of OUI, she was found guilty. I have never, ever, Cheryl, seen when a verdict is read that you could hear supporters all the way outside of the building.
Oh, it was very, very loud. You could hear them all screaming. You know, they were euphoric. You know, as you heard the judge say, anything that this is a win for the defense, just, you know, being found guilty on the operating under the influence charge, it's the least amount of you know, concern that she had in this case. Penny Commit, who has been following this for us since the very beginning, I think...
I don't know, leaving the scene of the accident probably would have been...
Quickly, because there was so much commotion in the,
less concern.
Studio, not in the studio, I'm sorry, but in the courtroom. The
They found her not guilty on that.
Probation for OUI, so that's the end of the trial. Her license was suspended years ago, but this is 1 year probation for OUI, and that's it.
Oh, they already sentenced her?
Participate in the 24D program, which is a driver alcohol education program.
Okay.
Yeah,
Which is
yeah.
standard practice.
And
I didn't even get community service with it.
Commit, who has been outside with supporters. Penny, we heard you tell us earlier that the crowd was deflated. That's not the case so much anymore.
Guys, the crowd here is very energetic.
So what a wild ride we've been through with this trial.
The crowd is screaming,
Second trial.
chanting, free Karen Reed, over and over again. I've seen people brought to tears. I've seen people hugging one another. This was a moment that was a long time coming for hundreds of Karen Reed supporters. Really quick, you were moved to tears, man.
You know how I have the...
Just because Karen could be any one of us, and she's been fighting for so long, and she has all this awesome support, and it was just such an emotional moment.
And this is just one.
Chris Dorner Appreciation Society shirt. Perhaps I should update that design and make it the Karen Reed Appreciation Society shirt.
You just stand by because Karen Reed just walked out of the courthouse.
Oh, we might hear from her, yes.
Perhaps, or maybe it's just part of...
She talks.
Looking at a live picture now from the courthouse. Let's just listen in for a few minutes.
I agree, Flo. Not only did she give us another good cop, apparently she exposed hella corruption inside of that police department.
So a couple of people there that we don't necessarily recognize right away.
Because as I said,
fix our camera on.
It absolutely looks like the cops planted evidence, tampered with evidence.
Yes, we want to make sure that we stay there on the courthouse because we do know that at some point here.
And it's possible the cops murdered him. That was one of the defenses that Reed put forward.
Day in and day out. We know
Show the court entrance.
We know supporters have been even moved back at some point, and there were issues.
All right, we don't have a great shot of it, but there it is.
What you're hearing now is just our crew trying to safely position themselves. As you can see here, there are a lot of people. There's a lot of them.
Hopefully, we're going to hear from her
in that crowd
because she liked to talk. She has talked throughout this entire trial. I thought if
Karen Reed
anything was going to hamper her, it was going to be her.
During the
incessant interviews.
Trial, they did come out and speak almost immediately. Cheryl, is there a delay here because she has to go and, take care of some paperwork?
Yeah, she might have to sign some shit.
Normally, because she was sentenced immediately, sometimes they put sentencing off, as the judge said, how about next week? And they said, we can do it right now. And so they just went forward doing the sentencing. Generally, you have to check in with probation before you leave the courthouse. So I'm assuming that that's what she's doing now. Because she has now a year's probation and has to participate into that driver alcohol education program.
Yeah, I didn't even get community service.
Standard operating under the influence.
We are just locked down.
First offense, you usually don't have to serve some time. I think second offense, you have to do like a week.
If you thought that crowd was
maybe
loud,
even overnight in a
when you
jail.
read the verdict, if you thought they were loud when we saw some of the extraneous parties walking out as well, just wait until you see the moment where she walks out with her legal team, and we shall see if she comments as well. I mean, she's spoken outside of the courthouse through this entire.
Honestly, I don't know how to feel about that because driving under the influence
as well, but this is the
serious thing in my mind
of something that began. And we should
probation in a class kind of isn't enough, I don't
January
think.
29th, 2022, but this jury saying today that she was not.
But this is a charge that happens to a lot of affluent people.
One thing they could agree on was that she was driving under the influence.
Right, and one of the things I wanted to say about that, just to clarify, because our legal system is unique, I guess, in the sense that there's no guilt or innocence. It's guilty or not guilty. And not guilty doesn't mean you didn't do it. It just means that they couldn't.
Oh, damn right, she did it.
Good point.
So I think that for a lot of people, to say she was found innocent, she was acquitted, and she was found not guilty. And, as we said, we've been watching this high-stakes trial for...
Light one up, tip one back.
Some excellent lawyering.
From a main woman, Karen Reed.
Witnesses testify, and the money that went into this case just to, to get it to this point, the second trial, streamlined to this time, fewer witnesses, but interestingly enough, very similar in the sense that the verdict, that they seem to be deadlocked.
No reason to,
Warlord. The two most serious.
This is just a Justin was into this, and that's why we're watching this right now. And this has no
wondering
real news value. It has no political value whatsoever. It's just Justin
we almost
was really into this trial.
Said, wait, they do in fact have a verdict they're going to stick to. You start to wonder, well, wait a minute, could this happen to us again?
Well, interesting, too, you heard the clerk, read the verdict.
I'm kind of amazed that we got to a verdict.
Is this your verdict, each person? So they had to say whether or not it was, especially in this case where, we had so many twists and turns and people said, yes, we have a verdict, then we don't have a verdict.
Because, none of the other news sites are really covering this. This is local to Boston. We're watching the CBS News from Boston right now.
Let's bring in Catherine.
Court TV is there.
Ahead of time,
Law and crime.
If she walks out, we are
JustinFREAKIN.
That you've been covering this. You have put a lot of time and effort into this trial. Tell us what your thoughts are right now. We will get Catherine's microphone. We're just working on that as we look live outside right now. Catherine, your thoughts on what you just saw?
So I think Judge Liu was correct. I sort of echo his thoughts that I'm surprised in that I thought there might be a decision on one of the other lesser included outside of the OUI, only because they've been talking about deliberating, about this for the last, yesterday, half of yesterday, as well as all day today. So to me, in my experience, jurors don't usually take that long relative to a single OUI charge. But, listen, there
was apparently a lot of debate. Some people on the jury thought she did it.
Individuals who are in the best position to evaluate the evidence, to hear the arguments from the attorneys. They see the witnesses testifying on
at least on the manslaughter charge.
Deciding whether they're credible or not. So, I am somewhat surprised by it. I do think the Commonwealth presented a very strong case, but I also think that she has excellent attorneys who are persuasive in poking the holes at reasonable doubt. So,
I thought her attorneys were full of shit, but apparently, fucking they won.
We also have Judge Liu. Let's get a quick reaction from Judge Liu as well, if you're there, Judge.
I'm here. I do have a quick reaction. The jury has spoken. One silver lining for the poor O'Keefe family is that a guilty of OUI is a little better, actually a lot better, for the civil case than a guilty of murder too. to oversimplify, gross negligence, it might not be covered by insurance. That's not exactly the standard, but OUI is definitely covered by insurance policies. I do think that the kitchen sink defense worked, and they held, I'm surprised, but they held the government to its burden. The Mass State Police need to up their game.
He keeps calling it the kitchen sink defense.
4 days ago, about how they have homicide detectives doing details. That does not.
But what he really means is they presented alternative.
There was a ton of attempted witness intimidation in this case.
Explanation.
I watched the entire trial live. I did not watch replays. As far as I know,
it's up to the
information I have now,
state to prove its case.
Were no witnesses that were intimidated.
The burden is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Testimony. So those are the silver linings that I can see.
And Judge,
so if you provide alternative explanations for the evidence as it is,
establishments where
that's simply doing your job.
Earlier in the night.
Not a kitchen sink defense.
This is a not guilty on the most serious charges, but she is found guilty on the operating under the influence. How do you see that playing out in terms of the civil case?
In the civil case, she is liable. Who knows about her assets? Who knows what assets were attached and who's first in line? But
yeah, she's probably gonna get taken to the cleaners.
It is my understanding that there are 2 bars that are defendants as well, and it slightly helps the defense. I'm sorry, it slightly helps the criminal defendant and civil defendant that there was this verdict in the civil case as well against the bars, but the bars are not automatically liable because of this verdict, would be my off-the-cuff answer. But she is automatically liable, and the question is, how much is her liability?
Judge, can I ask you a question just for complete clarification, because there's been so much in this case, and I think I just wanted to...
That judge is drunk, isn't he?
This case, because we've said...
we have microphones set up.
Looking at it, and you say...
This looks like a press conference is definitely happening.
John,
Speak for us, Karen.
Decide. The case done too? There's no investigation, right? There's no, all right, well, let's go.
This is the only time I want to hear from a Karen.
Prosecution has said all along it was her. That was their claim. So even the investigation is done with, right? Obviously, you can't try her again, double jeopardy. This is what she is guilty of, OUI. But the case itself is also done, correct?
The criminal investigation of who caused his death is over. You want my plain answer. Common sense says that's over. Why waste any time? What happened is they did not prove their case.
Yep.
And we'll find out later. In this world, we will find out later what the jury really thought. Maybe it's the fault of the Mass State Police. Maybe they need to change. Or maybe it's something else I haven't even thought of. But the investigation of a so-called third-party culprit would be an utter waste of taxpayer dollars.
Judge Lou, Courtney Cole here. Thank you for joining us. Cheryl Fiandaca was talking to us earlier about a really important point, and I think it's important for our viewers to understand that not guilty does not equal innocent per se. And there have been so many people who have been emotionally tied to this. But can you just explain what it means for the jury to have decided not guilty on those 2 charges?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Judge Lou, I'm asking you.
Okay. Yeah, so the not guilty really just means not proven. I thought you were asking Cheryl. So not guilty just means not proven beyond a reasonable doubt. And so let's say you got a charge here. Let's say it has 5 elements. If you're not convinced beyond a reasonable doubt as to just one of those elements, then that's not proven beyond a reasonable doubt.
That's why I'm saying, like, what he's calling the kitchen sink defense.
Every professional
was the right idea in this case, because they just presented alternate explanations for things that happened. And one of those alternate explanations was that the cop beat the fuck out of him because they had some scheme going on.
Of the criminal charge. I'm going to go out on a limb here again. She's going to be found.
And the cops really did have a scheme going on. So
death. I will predict.
And Judge,
if it's not settled long before trial, actually.
Judge, this question is for you and then I'm going to ask
This
Cheryl.
trial had everything.
Catherine Loftus.
That's why I was so into it.
What do you think the fatal flaw was to the prosecution's case where they couldn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt that she was responsible?
Yeah, I obviously don't know, and we'll find out, but it's probably one of the candidates for the fatal flaw would have been, and this is controversial, but I'm going to say it anyways, that Mr. Proctor, then Trooper Proctor, acting in a way in good faith, went too far and messed up the investigation, number one, and number two, didn't do enough investigation. That's the likely culprit.
Did you hear what he just said? That was a wild way to describe.
Basically says this.
Cop taking a shortcut and planting evidence and tampering with evidence.
I would have to agree. That's probably the linchpin.
You see the bias from the judge.
Other aspects of this case.
And they come across as biased because they work with these cops. So, of course, he thinks that cop is acting in good faith.
There wasn't anything.
Fuck all the way off.
Was the collection of the evidence was kind of suspect and not really the way normally people don't.
The collection of the evidence was suspect.
In red Solo cups and put them in a shopping bag. Even just safeguarding the evidence, the witnesses, the text messages.
Why did they have red Solo cups? Because they were at a party drinking together.
The scratches on the arm were dog bites. All of that expert testimony, then the competing data probably also had something to do with this case.
And Catherine, if you're there.
I'd have to agree with both Cheryl and Judge Lou, and I would sort of second this idea that she has excellent lawyering. I think it's almost.
And by the way, that's the reason why I'm not on a TV station somewhere. Because saying what I say is not popular for the people that, are in charge, that buy ads on the TV station.
A sort of representation of excellent lawyering between Attorney Alessi, David Yannetti, Alan Jackson.
Because me saying what I just said, because if I heard Judge Lou say that on air, I would respond exactly like that. That's a weird way to describe tampering with evidence. I don't think he was acting in good faith. And that right there would sever the relationship with the TV station and the police department.
So I think it was really a combination of all things put together that brought us.
Because when you have a good relationship with the police department, they do a lot of things for you to help you out with your job as a journalist. And that's how you end up having this bias towards what the police say.
The decision made by the jury finding her guilty only on the OUI charge on this Wednesday.
And you
tell me when I'm telling lies.
Several years now chanting and holding signs that said "Free Karen Reed," and she will be free the second she walks out of that courthouse. She's on probation for 1 year.
She shall be free.
This is a free woman. So all of those people who
stand straight
in pink.
Walk proud.
During this second trial.
She shall be free.
Because of Proctor.
Their sign language sort of symbol to say, love you, I think that's what it was.
Yes.
And
I love her.
Just waiting for the moment that she comes out as well. But again, if you're just joining us, I'm
in love with Karen Reed.
When the jurors
she's my main thing.
They had a verdict, then came back and said they didn't have a verdict, and then an hour later they did have a verdict. So if you thought this case was strange, it was until the very last second. And Christina Reck.
Yes, I know it was. That's why I've been following this so carefully.
Now actually talk to us because she's out of the courthouse. Christina, you're right there in front of the steps.
Christina, hey.
David, I'm sure you're seeing close-up cameras from our amazing photographers and from Penny Shot of the crowd outside here, but the view when you walk out of that courthouse to just...
I think that's the lady we saw last night that everybody was like, wow, them titties.
We actually could not hear the clerk and the jurors get through the rest of the verdict. They had to repeat themselves because the screams came in so loud outside of the courthouse when the verdict slip was being read that it was hard to hear. It was a real moment. I remember talking to you last time.
How does she have this much support?
They're talking about
JustinFREAKIN says as he's sitting here.
Room. It was a really emotional,
cheering her on.
Incredible moment.
From many states over.
Last year, the O'Keefe family clearly devastated. Some tears. heads hung. They exited the courtroom before the jury even exited the courtroom. Then the jurors exited the
I ran everybody off with my singing.
One deliberating juror, a woman, by my estimate, in her 30s, she was crying when they were leaving the courtroom. So this is emotional for everybody involved. Then sentencing happened, and we now know Karen Reed was sentenced.
Sparkles and I went to a stand-up comedy show one time. There was this young lady that was the opener.
Was there.
I can't remember who it was. Fortune Femster we might have went to.
The Reed family.
We've actually seen her a couple of different times, so she probably did open for Fortune Femster.
Everybody really hugging one another. We are keeping an eye out now. We do.
She was a local comedian.
I'll tell you, everybody.
And she had this, and she was
over the course of this entire
very prominent.
Nobody has.
And she had this whole bit about how this guy came up to her and was like, "Damn, girl, them some stupid titties."
See everyone come out this front door at one point. We just don't know when. There were places inside.
And she goes on with like a whole rant about, "Oh yeah, my titties were educated, DeVry educated titties."
The defense team, prosecutors, all were able to just spend some private time.
But like, if you were to see her titties, you would understand what the dude meant by stupid titties.
Everyone, so you imagine
they were stupid fucking titties.
Getting together before anybody comes outside. I did already reach out to the district attorney's office to ask if the DA will be coming here to make a statement or sending.
Like it was like not just big,
about the
incredibly perky.
Again, Karen Reed only convicted on the least included.
They were fucking gantic and also like missiles.
It was the least possible conviction that she could have received from this jury, and really just what a moment in that courtroom. I'm happy to answer any.
I have ran every single person off.
So Christina, we noticed as soon as
no one is watching my stream.
You could see the relief on Karen Reed's face, and then she was crying. David Yannetti appeared to be crying. Did you see how much emotion was happening there in the room?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of...
But this seems like top-tier content that I would be producing. Talking about titties.
Right now, I'm not even sure.
During a trial of a woman that killed a cop. I mean, how is that not prime Troll Patrol material?
There's that anxiety buildup, the 10 to 20 minutes that everybody was in the courtroom waiting for the jury to come in, waiting for that verdict to be read. You saw
also, CBS News Boston, I need to remember to...
really only seen kind of in video clips behind closed doors. She usually really keeps kind of
remember to use CBS News Boston as many times as I can.
Everyone was hugging before the verdict was read, and that once that verdict was read, even though it was so hard to hear it be read over the screams of people outside, what a moment. Tears from the defense team, like you mentioned, the Reed family, of course, the O'Keefe family as well.
Karen Reed.
They lost a loved one, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. This doesn't bring him back. This is not the verdict that the O'Keefe family was looking for, so really emotional for them as well.
Now, I do think it's important to point out that while this marks the end of the criminal investigation, there's still a civil case. So,
oh yeah, she's probably going to get taken to the cleaners.
This part was a victory
in the civil
there's still a
trial against her.
Right, that's the civil case. And, at this point, the civil case that was moving forward, the only thing that the judge stayed in that case is that Karen Reed did not have to testify and provide a deposition while this case was going on. So now that this case is over, she has the conviction only on the OUI. That other case can move forward. As we said, there are 2 bars, restaurant establishments also involved in that case. But Christina, and today you can see the euphoria from her supporters outside. She's been talking every day. I think these folks are hoping that she'll come out and address them for being there all this time and for staying with her, I'm assuming. Is that what you think?
Absolutely. We expect her team to address this crowd. I mean, the street is shut down right now. There are barricades holding the biggest crowd I've ever seen here back. There's got to be well over 1,000 people here right now. And like you mentioned, the Reed team addressed the media and supporters in the pouring rain last year after a mistrial was declared. So, of course, they'll likely consider this OUI conviction a victory. Karen Reed has been found not guilty on the 3 indictments she was facing. So I certainly imagine they'll come out here and give a statement, which there's been a lot of changes in the last few days because the more people who show up here, the more security plans kind of need to shift. So even the process of Karen Reed and her team leaving court every day has changed. You know, state police have asked the media to stay back a little bit because there's probably 10 times the amount of media that was here over the course of every day of testimony in this trial came here for the verdict, and then well over so the whole security operation has changed. I mean, you see behind.
Wait a minute, Holiday, what are you talking about?
Set up,
this is the one that killed her cop boyfriend.
Will make a statement.
She's a hero.
The real question is whether or not you'll be able to hear them on the TV microphone.
Wrong take.
To hear them live outside with the amount of people out here chanting, it's hard to imagine we will be.
And do you see any supporters for the, the O'Keefe family? I know that you said in the past few weeks that a few have shown up here and there. I don't know if there are any folks out there this afternoon.
Oh yeah. This is
it's tough to describe, right? So
this is our new hero.
They show up to the courthouse tend to be the people who are here for the Free Karen Reed movement. If you ask them, they say they're also here in support of justice for John O'Keefe. However, last year, a small, maybe dozen to 20 people in blue shirts had shown up as a counter protest to support the O'Keefe family.
And this is the woman from last night who everybody was like, "Oh my God, titties!"
Over the course of these last few days, kind of show up as counter protesters, but. I just want to point out that...
And we're probably going to hear from Karen Reed momentarily after she has been found not guilty
what you see
on most charges. She got charged with OUI, operating a vehicle under the influence.
The O'Keefe family, as is their right, has chosen to stay private, has chosen to not make statements and to really lay low over the course of this trial. Of course,
but she's been very, very open to talking to the media throughout the trial, throughout the other trial. This is the second trial.
But other than that, really, they've chosen to stay pretty subdued. Same with the DA's office. You know, we've reached out numerous times requesting interviews or statements, but there's a gag order in this case
Prometheus
on all of the attorneys, and because of that, the only people who've been able to speak out, who are really prominent players in the case, it's Karen Reed.
Yeah, Karen.
She's not under that gag order. However, the case is done now, and we assume that that means the gag order has lifted. So any of the attorneys could come out and give a statement now as well, prosecutors or defense.
Oh, but I want to hear from Karen.
While it has been very emotional, and there's been plenty of excitement here from the crowd.
America, fuck yeah! Yeah, this is a great day for America. Justice served.
Because it seems like although they are loud and emotional, that they have been peaceful outside of.
Yeah, they've been peaceful, ma'am.
That's true. I mean, you know, as happens with a crowd this large, there's been...
Yeah, we're waiting for Karen to come out.
There's been no
she was sentenced on her OUI charge.
The amount
so she is probably doing the requirements for that.
Of extra police on staff here to help out with security.
Her license was suspended originally.
In certain locations, kind of keeping the peace. But it has been a peaceful.
She was charged, so she may get her license back.
We've compared this to almost like.
But she's probably filling out the paperwork for her probation
or something to start because people came in the morning. The crowd grew all day, every day this week.
That's what she was given a year probation.
Directly across the street is the Registry of Deeds.
Probably gets her license back because it seems that that requirement's already been fulfilled. Her license suspension
and waiting for a verdict. Now that verdict has happened,
so that's probably what she is doing inside of the courthouse right now. So we're waiting for her to
in a peaceful protest
step out momentarily. They have a podium set up to
this entire trial, and we talked a lot about this week that we couldn't read the jurors'
She should not associate herself with Hulk Hogan, who is in the hospital. Hulk Hogan has been hospitalized. Bubba the Love Sponge, his former best friend, saying he's on his deathbed. TMZ has disputed that and said they have spoke directly with Hulk Hogan's people and that he is
second time around. I know you mentioned that they were younger,
experiencing complications from a neck surgery he had or something, but he is not on his deathbed.
Leaning in that direction.
So I don't want to say yes to the whole jury.
Sure.
I don't think there was ever a moment where I was like, oh, the whole jury reacted in a particular way to something. But there certainly were certain players. I mean, there was one man who's one of the older jurors. I would say maybe...
I hate Bubba so much. 60s. Prometheus, have you seen the movie? I think it was Netflix.
Right? no matter who was cross-examining. Cross-examination
about the death of Gawker, and that might be the name of it, Death of Gawker or some shit like that.
Back and forth, like he was watching a tennis match whenever cross-examination was happening. So he's someone that stuck out to me.
Highly recommend.
I'd say was in her 30s.
It's all about, Peter Thiel hooking up with Hulk Hogan.
She had a bit
about how
to some testimony.
If you spend any amount of time in Producer Dave's channel, and I know you do, you at least know the Peter Thiel side of it.
Moments where she actually looked up and she shook her head, like
that Gawker outed him, and he had a fucking
thinking right now.
hard on.
I just saw with tears in her eyes, who appeared to be crying as they left.
Through that, he funded Hulk Hogan's lawsuit against him, which brought him down.
Less of a overall they were well behaved.
Because Hogan was fucking Bubba the Love Sponge's wife.
Muted.
The sex tape nobody wanted. And who fucks their buddy's wife
But I will reiterate,
just starts going off about racist shit, thinking about their daughter while they're fucking. That's weird.
Studying for the bar exam soon, so you did get a front row seat in this case, which is really phenomenal.
Slander.
You got to see some amazing lawyering. What did you think about why you thought that the jury sided more with the defense in this case? What do you think the linchpin was for them during the course of this trial?
I think it was the choice of approach this
Once again, we're waiting for Karen Reed to come out and speak.
Even though the defense has no burden of proof of anything. The first time around, the defense really tried to prove a theory of the case, to prove what they believed happened. That didn't happen this time.
Karen Reed. I am going to produce a Karen Reed design for a t-shirt, Karen Reed Appreciation Society.
Defense's case really focused on discrediting any prosecution expert witnesses, discrediting any expert testimony that had been done, discrediting the investigation, and discrediting even the victim's injuries. So I think that really is what kind of
The crowd is reacting. Here we go. Here she is.
Different approach. Here they come.
Here's the hero of the day. Oh my God, we've got confetti. This whole situation is absolutely nuts, and that's what I love about it. This trial had everything. Let's hear from Karen.
I just want to say two things. Number one is I could not be standing here without these amazing supporters who have supported me and my team financially and, more importantly, emotionally.
We're with you, Karen.
4 years. And the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have and my team. Thank you.
So do you want to see it reopened? Karen, you want to see the case reopened?
Fantastic.
Should the case be reopened? No.
That's the cherry on top.
No, I mean, the case...
Nobody's fought harder for justice for James O'Keefe than I have. She says about the man she almost certainly killed.
Thank you. I want to acknowledge the strength of our daughter Karen, the support of the entire Reed extended family.
Did I say James O'Keefe and not John O'Keefe?
Of attorneys. Our first one that we found was...
Exactly right, Alien. Just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty.
It's a little. Bob Alessi, you know about. All right? It was a fantastic team, but we needed them all to defeat this. We thank everybody for their support from the heart. We love you all of the content.
We love you.
You help spread the word. Thank you so much. God bless you all.
Thank you for sticking it to the cops. I questioned your motives, especially during the second trial. You guys acted indignant. Thought you got overly emotional about stupid stuff. repeatedly asked for a mistrial. But who am I to judge? You guys are winners today. Cops pushing the crowd back.
Back in the studio, hear me right now?
Leftist audio.
Okay, what a moment. You know, I think the crowd probably couldn't actually hear Karen Read, like I told you. Those microphones go right into the camera, so you heard her better than the crowd did. But she said something along the lines of, no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe over the last several years than I have.
That's what she said.
When asked if the investigation should be reopened in this case, meaning, you know, if she alleges that somebody else did it, should police investigate that? Alan Jackson jumped in and said, no, this case is over.
We went over this last night, Prometheus.
Financial and emotional support. Her dad thanked everyone for their support. This crowd is now like slowly making its way over in the direction of Reed's car.
Everyone had the same reaction to
Get
her.
over there, can we? It's a little tough to see here, sorry. Too many cameras over here. As Reed gets into her car, state police escort, just for safety reasons, of course. Her supporters just flocking over there with, we've talked about this a little bit, the I love you sign that they give her.
They had an I love you sign. Rewind this stream about 30 minutes.
Kind of gathering over.
I don't want to do it again.
If you want to see via Sky Eye, I know we have the chopper up now. The size of this crowd is really indescribable. High Street and Dedham just completely shut down as these people cheer for the woman who was just acquitted of second-degree murder after
damn right they're cheering for her.
Trials and a case for 3+ years that has just torn a county, a town, a state, even parts of the country apart. I mean, anywhere you go, people want to talk about this case if you're affiliated with it. And
I'm talking about on my show.
To see the reaction to this outcome here.
You could see Karen Read's father speaking to reporters as well. And you were right, Christina. As Karen Read walked out of the courthouse and stood on those steps looking out over hundreds of supporters, she did say that no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe over the past few years as she has. And with that, she walked into the crowd.
I agree with her.
You sort of looked at me when you saw the confetti raining down as well, because I think every time you see a new twist to this case and something you've never seen before, it's sort of jaw-dropping.
It was jaw-dropping. I mean, you know, she comes out to these throngs of supporters, the confetti being dropped. It's, you know, you think you're at a movie premiere. It's amazing, you know, the interest that this case has got.
It was actually a woman who killed her cop boyfriend.
This case has got, you know, it's had attention throughout the country and also parts of the world. I mean, people are watching this case, wondering what was going to happen, following every detail. It's really captivated a lot of people's attention for a long period of time. And, you know, this is the...
Oh, she's probably incredibly problematic. That doesn't mean that we can't cheer her on in her endeavor.
And the work that the defense team did to get her found not guilty.
Oh, she probably says horribly racist shit.
In line, the response from her
her name is literally Karen.
As soon as she came to the podium, before she said thank you to her legal team or anybody else, she said she wanted to thank her supporters for being there for her.
You had to learn to compartmentalize.
And I think the response we've heard this entire
Carla, welcome in.
Scene falls in line with that.
It is a jubilant scene outside of
first opportunity
this courthouse. I don't think it's in Boston proper. I think it's one of the suburbs.
To her supporters.
And by the way, it may have seemed like a throwaway question.
Karen Read has been found not guilty on murder second degree, not guilty on manslaughter.
A reopening of the investigation. I mean, much of their defense was that somebody in that house at 34 Fairview did this. So the question is basically, if you think someone else did this, should police open up a new investigation?
Well, they'd have to investigate themselves because that house is a cop house.
You know, is this the end of the investigation? Could she be...
That house had a party.
So we're not sure about that, but you can
in which cops had attended.
Getting in the car.
She'd gotten in the car before she got back out.
Into that SUV, and as she has done almost every day, rolling down the window. Let's listen and see if we could hear what she was saying.
Oh, yeah, JL. No problem. Glad to help.
Well, really hard to hear what you said, but of course we did hear her on the steps of the courthouse. So we're done here.
We're done here. I mean,
we're done here.
We're hoping that we would be done and there would be some finality to this case and that we wouldn't be looking at a possible third trial.
I'm kind of surprised we didn't get another mistrial.
Not guilty verdicts on all the serious charges, and the only charge she was found guilty of was the operating under the influence.
Now, we are going to get out to Penny Commit. We want to give them a chance to get situated in everything that is happening out there. Again, we want our crews to be safe as they're bringing us what's happening out there on the ground. But we do want to make sure that we also share, we do have a statement here from Jennifer McCabe, Matthew McCabe, Chris Albert, Julie Albert, Colin Albert, Nicole Albert, Brian Albert, Kerry Roberts, and Kurt Roberts. We do want to share. They say, today our hearts are with John and the entire O'Keefe family. They suffered through so much and deserved better from our justice system. While we may have more to say in the future, today we mourn with John's family and lament the cruel reality that this prosecution was infected by lies and conspiracy theories spread by Karen Reed, her defense team, and some in the media. The result is a devastating miscarriage of justice. And I think just sharing this statement reminds us that while this is a victory for Karen Reed and Karen Reed supporters, there's another side of this case that doesn't feel the emotions that we've been seeing here on screen following this verdict.
We should point out, and you mentioned everyone that was from, and those are mainly the people who were inside 34 Fairview that night. Right. All of, so many different people pointing the finger at them. So when you hear those words are coming from people who are pretty angry about what has happened to their name over the past couple of years. But this is not from John O'Keefe's family. We need to make that crystal clear. We have not heard from them yet. Right. But we hopefully will at some point, because you can imagine what they're going through as well.
And this was from a PR company representing these folks who put out the statement to us. And some of them witnesses in the first trial, some of them were witnesses in this trial as well. So this is what they had to say about the verdict.
Now, we do want to get back out to WBC's Penny Commit, who is ready to talk to us now. Penny, tell us what is happening around you here. We know that now Karen Reed has walked out, safely gotten into her car, but there are still crowds of supporters there behind you.
Yes, the excitement continues for Karen Reed supporters. I would say at least 100 of them still out here. The police finally reopening this road here. It almost looks like this is the end of a concert. There's confetti all over the street. They've moved the crowd back, but we've seen a lot of happy tears, a lot of screams, a lot of excitement. This woman here with me, you were very emotional, almost brought to tears when the verdict was read. What brought you out here, and why did you care so much about this case?
Well, I've been following it from the very morning that it happened. Long story short, there was an illness in my family, so being home, we were all reading about it, watching it the whole time, and it was my grandmother was sick, and she has passed away. Tomorrow is actually her birthday, so the whole time that she was sick, she was saying, I know she's innocent, I know she didn't do it. She was following along with the case the whole time. So to see her finally get justice, and it's the day before my grandmother's birthday. It's a really big deal. Plus the fact that there's so much corruption in every state in America in general.
In the police departments.
And as a community saying, we're not going to put up with this anymore. We don't care if you're a cop or if you're not a cop. You can't go killing people for no reason. You can't fight people. You can't take the law into your own hands. And in Massachusetts, not going to put up with it anymore.
Thanks for talking to us. This is just one of, again, hundreds
of
supporters that have been out here. It doesn't look like people are going anywhere. A sea of pink. The police trying to get this crowd under control that has been very rowdy. We have seen, again, tears, embraces with one another. We have a couple hugging down.
Oh, Magna, welcome in.
As someone who's been out here every single day and very early, I can tell you these supporters.
We have not guilty verdicts for Karen Reed, a woman accused of killing her cop boyfriend. Not guilty on murder, second. Not guilty on manslaughter.
Opportunity to maybe go find some more of those supporters. Christine.
Not guilty leaving the scene. Convicted of operating a vehicle under the influence.
Yeah, David, this is Kelly Reed. She's a cousin of Karen Reed.
Hey, Kelly.
Father, as we discussed. But just how are you feeling? How's your family feeling today?
Overwhelmed. I don't think any of it's sunk in yet, but we are happy for Karen.
She had her heart glasses.
Especially happy for Bill and Janet and Nathan and Liz, and not having to come back here anymore, not having that worry about what would happen to her or what her future held, and the relief on Bill's face and Karen's face, and I want.
This was her second trial. First trial ended in a mistrial.
Will make her happy in the days and years.
I was upset that they.
I hope she gets all of that in spades.
Mr. Reed had said to us
that they decided to retrial her.
Should be on the back nine by now. Retirement, enjoying life. What stress have you seen this put on this family?
Well, I mean,
and she was doing the crocodile rock.
I don't think anybody can prepare you for this, I mean, we know Karen, we know her heart, we know how she was brought up, and we know she would never hurt anybody. And I don't mean disrespect to anybody else by saying that, but we never believed that she was guilty of this. And it's hard when you believe in
I believe it.
Somebody's innocent and other people don't, and they're trying to punish her for something we never believed she did.
How is that? I was wondering, because you brought it up. How is that for your family? Of course, nobody disagrees that there's a victim here, right? I mean, there's a man who died. What is it like for your family to be fighting for Karen's innocence, but also acknowledging what the O'Keeffes are going through?
I don't really know how to explain that, except that, decent humanity. Like, Karen loved John, and he's gone, and unfortunately for his family, he's not coming back. We've gotten Karen back. He's not coming back, and of course we feel horrible about that. I mean, I do, and I hope we can all just find some peace. It's been a lot on both families.
Yeah.
And I don't mean to speak for them, for sure, but it's been a lot for everybody.
What do you think is next for the Reed family, knowing that this criminal case is behind them?
Hopefully a good night's sleep. It's been a long time since we've had a full night's rest.
I have never seen confetti.
All the stuff going on behind the scenes.
Outside of an accused murderer's trial. This
amazing team. I mean, I cannot say enough about her defense team. We love them all. We've trusted them all throughout all of this. And
a glass of wine would probably be amazing for her.
Any one of the attorneys.
There's ever a day-to-day drink.
She's involved, completely.
She really.
Sports cards, welcome in.
Speculate, would she want to go into law or anything like that?
Would she?
I don't know what she'll want to do. Her and I have teased, and I hope she spends the rest of her life.
If I had life to do over again.
Thank you so much.
I'd be a lawyer.
Kelly Reed, a relative, a cousin of the Reed family. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
I'd be a criminal defense
Kelly
lawyer.
Was in the courtroom a lot of the second trial, most of the first trial, and has just been one of the Reed family members that has really been here the whole time. Back to you guys.
Of course not, Holiday.
I wanted to ask you, we saw in this trial.
Now we heard
so many video clips of Karen Reed.
We heard the way the news anchors described this, and the way the judge described,
just to point out,
they called it
what you had seen in court. As of yesterday, we know that the jury was still trying to figure out what to make of those video clips because it wasn't your typical testimony. She wasn't right in front.
A mishandling of evidence, I think they said.
That the same as somebody.
And I was like, that's a wild way to describe tampering with evidence.
Because I think we know that it did play a role.
It absolutely looks like the cops tried to
talking between trials or before a trial.
They gave every indication they were trying to frame her, even though she was probably guilty.
Some people
I compare it to OJ.
It was masterful. What did you think of all that?
The cops just being the cops fucked up the case.
Well, I will point out, you said it, and it's true. Every attorney I've spoken to says it's so incredibly rare to have a criminal defendant, not only a criminal defendant, a defendant who is facing a trial for murder, be on camera so often and be so candid with crews. And I think it became clear that when
she was dropping her cop boyfriend off at a cop party where everybody was drinking,
otherwise I can't imagine
and she backed into him and ran him over. They were having an argument.
And most attorneys I've spoken
to welcome in.
That Hank Brennan's choice to play those clips in this second trial was a really
she backed over him and then left.
Strategy. I mean, you can't force him.
And he died fucking crawling on the side of that
you had Karen Reed's
driveway.
This is my testimony. In the clips, she said that. You had her testimony.
The cops apparently planted hair
when you think
on the
just an OUI
tail light. They may have busted the tail light out,
which was played not once but twice. So once
there's reason to believe that they busted the tail light out and planted hair there.
I wouldn't have driven.
They were both drunk and they were driving back from somewhere else.
So isn't it?
And it was like 2 or 3 in the morning.
A defendant being candid in the moment. Either way, clearly the jury was unsure if they could really.
And what apparently happened was she backed into him, left him severely injured, and then he died in the snow because it was the middle of winter.
Some video interviews. Those are both pieces of evidence in this criminal trial. And so the jury was clearly confused whether they could really consider that. But then once they did, I mean, Miss Reed did really speak candidly about her drinking that night in some of those clips. So you imagine they must have considered that, plus some of the harder evidence like her blood alcohol testing.
And Christina, you also, after the
cops probably made a mistrial, yeah.
You spoke with the O'Keefe.
They collected evidence in the red Solo cops because they were all drinking. And they had been caught in some kind of a scheme. They had been like harassing people and shit. And one of the defenses that the defense threw out was that they could have murdered him to keep him quiet.
You heard that statement.
From exposing their little racket that they had going on.
Those are witnesses who are really close with the O'Keefe family.
So yeah, it was just the cops being cops probably fucked up a slam dunk case.
Not on behalf of the O'Keefe family. It probably reflects the way that they are feeling. We haven't seen them come out of the court.
It's amazing. This trial had everything.
In this entire trial, they might have been escorted out the back.
And once again, this is the second trial. The first one ended in a mistrial.
Family in front of this whole crowd here cheering for Karen Reed, but
the first trial and this trial, just
background conversations with the O'Keefe
shit shows the entire time.
They firmly believe that Karen Reed is responsible, and not only that, they really do blame her for the movement, the fans, the people who have come out and at points.
Yeah, his injuries also didn't really match that he was struck by a vehicle. He had some kind of, there was discussion of these bite marks, and the bite marks weren't even introduced until
today
the second trial.
Karen Reed was convicted of an OUI.
Like, it's fucking crazy.
Prosecution. They're not guilties across the board on the indictments here.
Christina Rex, thank you. And again, if you're just tuning in.
No, they beat the fuck out of him. They didn't shot him.
At the very beginning.
They didn't shoot him.
Trial
they didn't shot him.
You may be wondering what you've been looking.
I love the fucking helicopter is following Karen Reed. Is there gonna be paparazzi at her house?
From the courthouse, far away from the courthouse at this point. You normally don't see this type of view on your screen unless it's a criminal pursuit, something.
Yeah, seriously.
Law enforcement. So you might be wondering, well, what is happening? Did something else happen? Is there a chase? There is not a chase. What you're getting a look at is Karen Reed safely.
Yeah, I kind of find it wild you guys are following her to her house.
But you also
with a camera. That's weird.
A little earlier, we did show you Karen Reed getting into the car. We weren't able to hear quite what she was saying, but we will be able to now. So this was moments just after she got into the car and rolled the window down. So as she is getting to her.
Yeah, that was one of the theories that the defense threw out.
My supporters, they pulled us through.
The cops beat the shit out of him, left him to die in the driveway, and tried to frame Karen.
And what you're hearing here echoes the very first thing that she said when she finally came out onto those steps and in front of the microphones. She is very grateful for all of the support from her supporters, emotionally and financially, is what she told us.
Cheryl, let me ask you this question, because Christina was just talking about how often she spoke during the trial, that she did these documentaries, and it was so unusual.
I'm not high enough for this shit. We're gonna have to grind some more up.
What in the world are you doing? That, like, this probably won't work for you, because is it possible that in the end that was really masterful? Because if you listen to her supporters, they all describe her as, could have been my sister, could have been my mother, she's the girl next door.
She felt relatable.
And by seeing her outside of court, you saw her sort of saying...
I thought if anything was going to do her in, it was the fact that she talked way too fucking much.
I'll talk outside. Maybe it was just how she felt. Maybe it was a masterful defense strategy.
It was an interesting strategy.
Interesting, for sure,
right?
yeah.
I mean, you know, there she is talking on documentaries, giving interviews, and one of the things that I do
And
think
the prosecution used all of those against her.
that she was drinking. She admitted it. She admitted that maybe I shouldn't have been driving. So maybe that led to the conviction on this, and maybe that was the only thing that the jury trusted was what she said happened. And also they had the blood alcohol evidence. They also had video of her drinking at the various establishments, and taking all of that together, they thought, okay, we don't trust anything else in this case, but this is what she admitted to, and she said she did it, then that's it.
Everything was so vague. Everything had a point and counterpoint. What had no counterpoint was the fact that she was on that video saying, I was drinking. Things were a little fuzzy. And you're right. The defense on that manslaughter charge wanted the subcharge of OUI, right? And that's the one thing that their client had actually admitted to. And in the end, the jury, and we don't know why they did it. We don't know if it had anything to do with any of these strategies.
And all she got was probation on it.
The opportunity to say, you know what, I don't know about manslaughter, but we do know that she said that she was drinking while she was driving.
And, you know, she had to admit it. There were videos of her at the, you know, the two bars that they went to, the blood alcohol level, her, you know, she had to admit that. And by admitting it, not only does she look relatable, but she looks truthful. She said, you know, I didn't hit him, I didn't do that, but I was drinking and I probably shouldn't have been driving.
I didn't think about it that way. That is a good play.
Catherine Loftus and Judge Lou, it would be interesting to hear from the both of you, starting with you, Catherine, the importance of the relatability factor. You know, David and Cheryl, you point out that she had to fess up, like, I was drinking. What, you know, drinking and operating a motor vehicle, what it led to is horrible. But unfortunately, you had people and maybe jurors who could hear that and say, I don't want to admit it, but I've kind of been where she is too. So talk to us about the relatability factor, because, you know, we talked about how people weren't so sure about how all of this talking was going to play in her favor, but it seems like that relatability was more important than we all realized in the moment.
All right, we don't have Catherine's mic. Let us know when we have Catherine's mic and when we have Judge Lou's mic as well. She's back up on the screen. Does that mean we're ready to go? Go ahead, Catherine.
Thanks, guys. So I think, you know, it's interesting. Obviously, this is not just an OUI case. This was charged as a second-degree murder and manslaughter. But what most
just an OUI
is, particularly criminal defense attorneys, about OUIs is there is a real relatability factor that you like to argue.
I've had an OUI before, not gonna lie.
Many people who do sit on juries
had my license suspended for a year.
had a few
had to
beers,
take that class. That's the other thing. She's got to take that fucking class.
And so in a way, they can sometimes put themselves in that position and understand. So I think, you know, despite the fact that I think it would still
18
risk to allow their client to speak, you know, in such substance relative to this case, particularly because it likely will be used in the civil lawsuits as well. It clearly paid off.
I go to the first day of the class. I don't even think about it.
And, you know, in playing these.
My grandmother had gotten me this shirt, and I still have it to this day. It's got holes all in it. I wear it every now and again, usually on laundry day.
Her to be
it says like
and that, you know, there were admissions.
Bass beer or something. It has like a sea bass on it. Like it's just like a kitschy shirt. It's a fictional thing. I don't drink.
Definitely a risk in allowing her to.
I wasn't charged with DUI for being drunk.
Judge Lou, if you can hear us, same question to you. Courtney's question.
As I'm sure anyone can imagine.
Relatability work in.
But I got this bass beer shirt.
A significant role. The case is so complicated that there are probably multiple reasons.
Fuzzy Simba, welcome in. And I had like a Matt Kenseth hat, but Matt Kenseth's NASCAR sponsor was Smirnoff. So I'm in this DUI class. I don't drink, once again.
Humanization. There's even a second level to it.
And both my articles of clothing had references to alcohol on them.
We may have jurors who want their 15 minutes of fame. There's another level to it.
Oh, I've been ecstatic this whole time, Fuzzy Simba.
The seriousness of the charges, and that is jury nullification. When the jurors either consciously or unconsciously think that the
jury nullification, Luigi.
Judge Lou, thank you. And we do want to get back out to Christina Rex, because Christina, I have the same question for you. Again, you've had a front row seat. Talk to us about the role of relatability, the way that made Karen Read feel relatable to the average viewer watching, to the jurors who were taking in all of that evidence.
I had the benefit of speaking to any of these jurors yet, of course. I don't even know their names. They just left court. So I can't say for sure how the jury felt, but you know that Karen Read's supporters felt that way. I mean, you heard them all the time. Karen Read could be anyone.
Oh, you know.
She could be your mother, she could be your daughter, she could be your sister. And I think you have to take into account, I mean, who Karen Read is. She's a former financial advisor, former professor, you know, middle-aged, upper-class white woman who's dressed to the nines every day.
Literally named Karen.
Not in maybe it's not you know, normal to admit this, but she's not who people think of as your average murder defendant, and a lot of her supporters would say that. And I think a lot of what her supporters took from her media statements was,
am I the only one that thinks like, oh, she's absolutely capable of that?
Yeah, that's what we heard them
She
say.
looks like a sociopath.
Her willingness to be forthcoming with the media really played into their belief that she was an innocent woman who was not responsible for any of these crimes.
And some of her supporters actually put their money where their mouth was. They actually financially supported her. I mean, she came out and said she wanted to thank her supporters for being there for her, but also for the financial support. I know there's been a number of fundraisers, and, you know, this defense has been very expensive. She had some of the, you know, best lawyers in the country here. So what do you think about that and the fact that they were so willing to support her financially in this fight?
She got away with it clinically.
And it really
She is not guilty.
Talk about donors to like political events. Or
Not guilty on all the serious charges. She was convicted of operating a vehicle under the influence.
Funding Karen Read's defense team.
She was sentenced to 1 year probation.
Out of
She got to take the DUI class.
or disability, or weren't working right now, or were taking PTO from their jobs to come attend this trial.
So she's already been sentenced. This is completely over.
Karen Read's defense team, which the donations ended up coming in over $1 million over the course of the
They had confetti outside the courthouse when she walked out. It's one of the wildest scenes.
There's something I don't even.
I've not seen anything like this.
Now, but the street, High Street here in Dedham, it's been drizzling a little, hence the umbrella, is covered in pink confetti. Now wet.
She said nobody has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than she has.
Ended in.
That was just the cherry on top.
Pink confetti kind of flying in the air and ending up stuck to the ground.
That's what she came out and said
minutes ago. People are starting to clear out. So the belief in this cause.
She had 200, 300, 400 people outside of the court. You could hear them from inside the courthouse erupted when the first not guilty was read.
Against the other charges against her, murder in the second degree.
I'm telling you, this has been one of the roller coaster for the last 2 years.
People drinking and driving
since the first trial started.
Definitely aren't. I want to make that very, very clear. But at the end of the day, when we looked at this, Christina, and we looked at the three
This is another one of those stories where I've been following it since the beginning on the Troll Patrol.
You know, in the end, I think she's going to get an OUI.
No, and just OUI is the way to put it. You know, so many people have lost loved ones to drinking and driving, but Karen Read had the potential to be convicted on causing someone's death due to drinking and driving, and that didn't happen. All she was convicted of was the actual drinking and driving, not what the prosecution alleged was the result of that drinking and driving. So that really is kind of the critical dividing line here, right? And that's why it is just OUI in this case, because the defense said there was no collision, and it appears at the end of the day that jurors either believed that or they didn't believe there was a collision beyond a reasonable doubt.
There was enough doubt.
That's an important point, because that, you know, we were looking at the charges when we first started looking at this case, when the jury got the case, and we were saying that to convict her on any of these serious charges, you had to believe that there was a collision and that she hit him. And apparently they just could not get there beyond.
I think there was, but the cops fucked it up so bad.
is the operating under the
It was plausible that there wasn't.
A major part, if you're taking the closing arguments from last Friday, again, very quick synopsis of what they had to say, but they said it a couple of times. Hank Brennan for the prosecution said, it's simple. She was drinking, she was drunk, she hit him, and she took off. But the defense said, and they said it 2 or 3 times, there was no collision, there is no case. There was no collision, there is no case. They said that.
If the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit.
That obviously sunk in when the jurors sat down and said, you know what he just said, do we know for sure there was a collision? That was a major part of this, and it makes you wonder if that closing argument was what clinched it.
Right, that could have just been what put her over the edge there. But, you know, I don't know that we'll ever know until the jurors actually speak, and, you know, we're hoping some of them might. I know that that sometimes in these cases jurors do want to talk, other times they do not want to talk. They have to know, obviously, how many people are focused on this case. So
that's part of the issue, is that this is a trial where, you know, people have felt so passionately about it. Sometimes that passion has turned into really, you know, vitriol and people being treated poorly. So I think this might be one of those cases. And the first time around, I think maybe we only talked to a juror off camera who didn't want to identify themselves. But Christina, you actually spoke to a juror the first time around, and I know from some of the things that you put on social media yesterday that the juror had still been reaching out to you about things that were happening in this trial.
Yeah, this juror was still paying attention, and I just want to point out, this juror is someone who has never gone on TV on any station, and to my knowledge, I'm the only person this juror has spoken with, and they were a member of the deliberating jury during Reed's first trial. They were really the person who explained to me where the confusion was and kind of why the mistrial happened, why the jury was deadlocked, and what way it was deadlocked. And I didn't know this because we had not been keeping in touch as often, but clearly this juror from the first trial was still following the case, because yesterday when I posted on X the question from the jury when they said, if we're deadlocked...
We've apparently got a news conference with Vladimir Putin where he's going to be taking questions from international journalists.
On that one charge. And
you guys like to watch that?
Responded to me, yep, that's a great question. Hopefully the jury does the right thing this time. So that juror clearly struck by the fact that this jury was asking questions that the jury in the first trial didn't.
And that's why that question stuck out to us so much when we first started talking to you this afternoon. You know, we explained to you this is why that particular question, it was that fourth question. That's why this was so important, because this is where the trouble was the first time. And it's interesting to see that because that first jury, you know, that first trial is over, but still, obviously, it is still sitting with them. It is still with them. It's interesting to see.
I'm sure Putin's pretty happy about it. Well, he's authoritarian. He's probably on the side of the cops.
Very important. This is where the trouble happened for us.
We do have Penny Commit across the street from where Christina is, looking directly at the courthouse. She's been speaking with some of the supporters there in the Free Karen Reed movement. What do you...
Free Karen Reed. Free Karen Reed.
Well, you guys saw me earlier. What a totally different picture, right? The street now has traffic going through it, confetti still laying in the street. It started raining, so a lot of Karen Reed supporters made their way out. But I have someone here. Her name is Caitlin. She's a resident of Norfolk County. And if you recognize her, it's because she's been very vocal on TikTok, making daily videos of this trial. Tell me why it's been so important to you.
Well, as you said, Penny, I am a county resident, and it's not every day that we see something like this happen, right? And this has become so big and so huge that I feel like this case needed to be known, and for county residents, not only from local starting in Canton, but then making it even bigger, county, worldwide now. I think it's so important.
I mean, I said earlier I didn't think it had any, you know, news value. This is just me
that people start learning,
being really interested in the case.
Learn how to start seeing things within their own county too, in their own area.
And I saw you very emotional. I recognize you from TikTok. Yeah. What brought you to near tears when the verdict was read?
She's free. Karen Reed could be any one of us. She could be any one of us. You know, the evidence was not there. The evidence wasn't there. And I can't even express to you how it feels amazing on one end, and on the opposite end, you know, we still need to figure out what happened to John at the end of the day. Karen didn't do it, and now let's flip the script and say what happened to him, and also celebrate a little bit now too.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you so much.
And you know, on that point, I interviewed someone earlier out here today that had a sign that said, "Don't forget John." And I asked her, you know, who do you think is responsible for his death? She didn't answer, but she said she did not believe it was Karen Reed. But she wanted to make sure that John's name did not get lost in all this. We've seen a lot of people mentioning that today because at the end of the day, while there was a celebration going on out here, there's still a man whose life was lost. And I think it's really important for us to remember that as the confetti starts to get swept away and the crowd starts to clear out, guys.
Penny Commit, by the way, great job throughout this trial. You and Christina Rex just doing amazing work. And all of our photographers behind the scenes, all of the people who are running the trucks down there. This is not an easy job, and we thank you so much. If we can, we want to bring in Judge Lou again, because Cheryl and...
Oh, Judge Lou, he's been horrible.
There has been a lot of confusion over the verdict slip. First trial, this trial, to the point where yesterday, not only did the jury have a question about it, but they had to make an amended verdict slip.
Right.
I don't see my
Does
grinder.
this change things going forward? Are we going to come up with a new system where we can make things a little bit more clear?
You know, that's a good question. I mean, so the fact that it's come up a couple of times now in this case, both trials.
It was behind the ball.
You know, there is no case law that supported what the defense wanted the judge to do, and she said that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not an opportunity to make changes if you notice that something isn't working that maybe had been working in the past. So it's a good question for the judge. You know, he's sat on so many of these cases. So, Judge, what do you think about that?
I don't have an ESP, but I'll suggest that any change will not be an order from on high from the Supreme Judicial Court.
Champagne Runts is what I'm smoking now.
To go up.
I hadn't even opened it yet.
On this issue. But it might seep its way into the continuing education that mass trial judges get a lot of. From two different organizations. So they may well discuss this in their continuing education and just informally make changes to verdict slips.
And Judge, it obviously very difficult to talk about another judge's decisions, right? The deep respect that you have for one another. Did you have any problem with the way this was handled? Because over the past couple of days, mainly from people who are super passionate about the case, they felt very strongly that here we go again. It's just not clear enough, especially for 12 civilians who were pulled off the street with no legal background. Did you have any issues with the way that was handled? Do you think that things could have been done differently to make sure that they never went through this confusing process?
I actually think the judge handled it perfectly. I don't think that's a big deal. I could nitpick over a few things here and there in the 7-week-plus trial, but the verdict slips, in my view, were fine. The defense really threw everything, including the kitchen sink, at the judge. The judge did remarkably well with those, with all the things that they did. Personally,
I feel like the defense set out to cause a mistrial.
Crowd control, where the state police are a key issue in the case, but that's all water under the bridge.
Predominantly because they asked for it like every fucking day.
That came into the jury yesterday. You know, a lot of folks at home were really thinking, why couldn't she answer that question when they said, you know, what if we had a verdict on 2 of the charges, but we're deadlocked on 1 charge? Does that mean we're a hung jury? And she said, I can't answer that question. And, you know, a lot of folks were saying, well, why can't she answer that? Why can't she just say, no, you can deliver a partial verdict? And you and I talked about this yesterday afternoon, and you said that the judge has a very different responsibility once the jury starts deliberating.
Yeah, it's complicated, but it's critical to the public's understanding. Once the jury is deliberating, the judge's role changes. The judge becomes more of a potted plant, and that is because the jury worships the judge. In the slightest little thing that the judge says can push them with exaggerated effect towards some result, and that's wrong.
You all have the evidence. It is your
looking like
job. You all have the evidence. It is your
looking like
job
twinsies
to make this decision. I can't make these decisions for you. They had very specific.
We were both wearing pink shirts
yesterday about the time frame for the operating under the influence charge, and when when they came back and they asked, it was their very first question, they wanted to get into specifics about the 12:45 a.m. on January 29th, 2022, when Reed left Fairview Road.
Light one up for Karen Reed.
And I think for us watching at home, it's interesting because you expect the judge to be able to give a more direct answer. But to your point, Judge Lou, the judge told them, you have all of the evidence laid out. I can't make this decision for you. And I think that was interesting for viewers to hear at home who've been watching the case.
Yeah, anytime on the date on the indictment, the jurors have the originals of the indictments. Anytime on that day is convictable. And Mr. Brennan made one of the few missteps of his magnificent trying of this case. He said, give a time frame. That's incorrect, unless there's a bill of particulars, and there was not in this case that I can recall. So the judge, there is no time frame. It could be at 4 a.m. if it's on the right date on the indictment. It's not the judge's role to intrude on what the jury decides.
And, you know, one of the other things that I think a lot of folks asked as well is, you know, the judge decides what the sentence is once the verdict is read. Once they deliver a verdict, if it's a conviction, the judge determines the sentence based on a sentencing report and on recommendations by the prosecution and the defense. And the jury has nothing to do with that, right?
They have zero to do with that. And it actually relates to your first question. The jury cannot be concerned with results or with outcomes or anything like that. The juror's responsibility is to speak the truth. Did they prove this case according to the jury instructions? It is not the jury's responsibility to give a result that is just. It is their responsibility to say, here's the truth about what happened. And then somebody else will decide the sentence if the defendant is convicted.
So in so many of these cases that, you know, that we've seen, and especially in this one, it seems like the jury really took this case quite seriously. I mean, they went through the evidence, they asked the questions, even at the last minute after they had delivered a verdict, changed their minds and said, wait a minute, we're not sure. We don't have a verdict. You know, I know that you said it's pretty unusual and that you had never seen it in your career, right? Is that right?
That's right. That's right. All the signs are that they used the utmost care in this case. You know, they had 18 jurors to begin with, and they ended with 18 jurors. And I say it's because of the judge's handling of the jury with compassion.
It is kind of amazing.
And the 18 jurors' moral commitment to doing justice over a 7-week plus trial. And that continued all the way through deliberations. They were long past the point where you might say, oh, the jury's just trying to make it look good because they know everybody's watching. They were long past that. They were at the point where people there had to have been some fighting going on in the jury room. And obviously we heard about tears, so there was some strong disagreement in the jury room. All the signs are that this jury was superbly careful about their duties.
Judge Jack Luke,
he said duties.
I want to get back out to WBZ's Christina Rex because we know we have talked a lot about Karen Reed, the response from Karen Reed's supporters, what we heard and what we saw outside of the courtroom. But we do also want to circle back around to John O'Keefe's family. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the response there? Christina, you did mention to us that perhaps John O'Keefe's family maybe exited out perhaps a different way because we did know that we saw a lot of Karen Reed supporters and Karen Reed come out, but we didn't necessarily see the O'Keefe family at the conclusion.
Yeah. Courtney, it's my understanding and belief that the O'Keefe family likely went out a side door of the courthouse, understandably to avoid the massive crowd of people cheering for Karen Reed that was out here right out front. And, you know, these are the points where for us in the media, it's our responsibility now to really balance the story. You know, there were 1,000 people out here in support of Karen Reed. At the end of the day, there's a victim at the center of this case. Everybody agrees on that. Karen Reed agrees that, an innocent man died. So let's just talk about John O'Keefe a little bit. He was 46 when he passed away. And the thing about the O'Keefe family is they have been through so much tragedy. Okay, so John's older sister, Kristen, she died in 2013 of a brain tumor. And it's my understanding that it was not sudden, but it was very fast, a number of months.
I don't think I've ever rated Hassan before. Let's see if we can get a shout out
Her
from
husband and
from the big boy.
very young children at the time.
Hey, get ready for the show. I'll see you guys tonight. Light one up, tip one. Oh, wait a minute. I can't do that.
Family to take care of those young
don't do
kids.
anything I wouldn't do. However, that doesn't limit your options very much at all. We'll see you tonight on the Troll Patrol live.
After she passed away. And those